Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event. Fight fans worldwide, you've tuned into the number one undisputed boxing podcast today. This is the Boxing Breakdown. Now, your heavy-handed, hard-hitting host, Mark Roxey.
All right, boxing fans, what's up, what's up, what's up? I am so happy to be with you today, and I'm glad you're joining with me on the Boxing Breakdown. So I just wanted to say that, you know, this coronavirus thing is still happening, right? So at the time of this recording, we are still in the midst of coronavirus, and it's challenging at best. And one of the areas that have been the hardest hit has been the fighters, right? The boxers, the promoters. The boxing industry has really taken a hard hit on this one. And but I have been hearing some murmurings of boxers, you know, back in the gym, fighters preparing, promoters preparing for fights that might occur in undisclosed locations, and all kinds of different scenarios of returning. About 2 weeks ago, I saw a MMA match that was broadcast on television, and that MMA match, I think, generated somewhere upwards 700,000 pay-per-views at roughly $60 to $65 a pay-per-view. And that got me thinking. It got me thinking about what is it that the boxing promoters out there are really thinking about? What is it that they are working on? We know that they're online. We see a lot of the promoters doing all kinds of casts. A lot of, you know, Top Rank and some of the larger companies are turning all of their marketing prowess into social engagement. So there's a lot of social engagement happening online and elsewhere. And I find it to be fascinating. But what I really want to know, and what I'm really up to, is try to understand what are the promoters doing and how are they going to return. And I've had a lot of conversations with different promoters, and you know, I've certainly been thinking about it on my own. But I thought that today I would invite someone who I truly admire. And I don't just admire him as a promoter, but I admire him as a human being, and I've spent a lot of time with him. I've done business with him, full disclosure. And so I have been on every side of this particular promoter's radar. And I have to tell you that he's one of the finest men that I've had the pleasure of doing business with. And also, just we've struck up a great friendship, and it's been fantastic for me, and I hope it's been fantastic for him. But I just want to welcome at this time my good friend, a promoter, an amazing man, and an amazing father and husband, my brother, Manny Rivera of Hard Hitting Promotions. What's up, Manny? You there, brother?
What's up, brother? Absolutely, man. Just humble, man. Humbling the presentation, the you know, the kind words that you said. You know, the only thing I can tell you is that it's vice versa, brother. It's definitely, the feeling is mutual. You know, I believe God puts people in your path for a purpose, and sometimes he utilizes the tools that can bring us together, that can bridge the gap for a bigger purpose. And whether boxing, I believe that whether boxing is going to be in each other's future or not, I think what we have formed is something, way outside of the realm of the sweet science.
That's right.
And I appreciate that sincerely. I really appreciate your friendship.
Yo, Manny, listen. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate the kind of person you are, the kind of businessman that you are. And I really just am really honored. And I know the fans and the listeners today will be super, super stoked to hear a little bit about your story and a little bit about who the man is behind Hard Hitting Promotions. I mean, there are many people behind Hard Hitting Promotions, and I've met many of them, and I know many of them. And it seems to me that the guys that you work with tend to be of a certain cloth. And, am I right in saying that?
Oh, no, absolutely. And, just to not cut you off too long, you would understand, and hopefully the listeners could understand once we talk about where I come from, where I've been, and where I am today, and why my vision is completely different than, or I believe is different than what most people in the industry is.
You're right. Your vision is different. I've worked with a lot of promoters. I've spent a lot of time, as you know, of doing business on a lot of different levels with a lot of different people. And one thing I will tell you, and for the folks out there, that you are, you say what you mean what you say, and you always deliver, and I appreciate that as a trainer and manager. That's something that is not always the case, but you find a way to always make that right. So,
I believe all men, right? Any men, and I mean men by men and women, have to understand where they come from to know where they're going.
That's right.
And I believe I truly became a man in the true meaning of the word 5 years ago or so, and it's understandably how when it all comes together, it makes you understand how it all correlates, and it's why the vision is the way it is.
So
it all kind of comes together into that.
Manny, what do you mean? What is it that happened that 5 years ago that transformed, it sounds like you had a big, extraordinary transformation roughly 5 years ago. What was that?
Well, I mean, it was due to the passing of my daughter.
Wow.
She was 2.5 years old. And that time, that event, kind of made me understand what life is about. Wow. And what my purpose in life is. And it was so different than what in the first 35 years of my life I thought it was,
Right.
Wow. But with that being said, to get to that point and understand it, you would have to I would have to explain my past, my childhood, you know.
What was that like? What was your childhood like?
So, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about my story, and I guess we all come to what we, you know, what our conclusions are, right? As everyone sees things and believes things in a certain manner.
Right.
I'll start off with saying that I had a great childhood, despite what you might come to believe.
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly sit here and say that I had a great childhood. But, you know, I had the childhood that, unfortunately, you know, most, and I hate labels, but, you know, for the audience sake and for us to kind of get a sense, I will have to use them. But I say, you know, where most of us minorities or Latinos or, you know, black and brown, and like I said, I hate labels because I know a lot of Caucasian people also that has gone through the same struggle that I had gone through. So,
sure, but the struggle
you know,
the struggle is definitely unique. I mean, you have to know, especially growing up in our generation, you know, the struggle is real and the struggle is unique, and it's not to put down anybody else's struggle, but certainly, you know, you speak about a struggle that all Latinos and people of color experience on some level. So I think that makes your story so powerful.
I was born in Puerto Rico and in Bayamon, the hospital in Bayamon. I was the first child to my mother Madeline Negron and my father Jesus Rivera. You know, two young Latin parents, Puerto Rico. I mean, my mother was 16 years old when she had me. My father was 17 and a half years old when he had, you know, when they had me. And,
Right.
you know, humble parents in the islands and I would say good parents, you know, they wanted the best for me and they really tried to do that. So like every Latin, parent living in the islands, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s, their dream was to come to America, you know.
Sure. Yep.
You know, the expectation of America to my parents was, you know, almost heavenly, you know.
Right.
The belief was that, you know, the streets were made of gold and you know, and
right.
And obviously when they came, you know, they realized that, you know, the struggle is real just like anywhere else. But,
right.
You know, I understand that, you know, they, you know, believe it becomes reality, right? So if you work hard enough and you believe it, then the reality can fit in.
Right.
So at the age of 1.5 years old, my mother and my father made the trip to the United States, and we settled in New Jersey. My father's sister was already living here. She married a Colombian man, and his family had a business, you know, a little what we would call a bodega, a corner store, and that served the neighborhood and on and so forth. So, you know, so we made the move over here and we settled into a little apartment. Shortly after that, after arriving, my mother, you know, found out that she was pregnant with my sister, Mary Rivera, and her marriage name is now Mary Brown. And when she found that out, she wanted to have, well, we said that she wanted to have her kids in Puerto Rico and been born in Puerto Rico. So we moved back to Puerto Rico. My mother had my sister, and a year and a half later, had my youngest sister. So all three of us was born in Puerto Rico. Shortly after my youngest sister was born, we made the trip back to the United States and settled in the same neighborhood that we were in, 3.5 years prior. And at that time, it's the early 80s, it was the epidemic of the crack era and
Right.
drugs. And,
Serious. The 80s were 80s and even 90s. We lost a lot of people to those epidemics back in the 80s and 90s. That's real.
Right. So, unfortunately, my father, fell into that trap and became, a drug user, addict,
Right.
whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the end when it came to, the American dream and having,
Wow.
a stable home and a stable family.
How old were you then? How old were you when that happened?
So I was about 4 years old.
Okay.
When we're talking about me coming back, my sister was about 2 years old, and then my youngest sister was Rivera. She was just born at the time.
Right. Got it.
So, we're in New Jersey, Jersey City. I don't know the exact town. I know we moved a lot, and that's also part of the same struggle.
Right.
It seemed like
One pad
Christmas
to the next.
time
One pad to
and
the next.
holidays was one house to the next. So,
Right.
But I know it was definitely in New Jersey at the time. So Jersey City area. So we moved in. My dad came and went, and a lot of violence in the house. I mean, I remember one time very vividly that my mom and my dad was fighting, real intense argument, and he hit my mom so hard that he knocked her out.
Yeah.
And I remember him getting so scared and asking me to get water and help him to wake her up, and
Wow.
and thank God she was okay, and she got up and he left the house. And the reason for that argument was that he had robbed from my daughter, my sister's godfather at the time.
Right.
Really, really good man. Actually, he was the man that introduced me to Cantinflas. All Latin people would know who Cantinflas is.
Right. So what?
He was a Cantinflas.
So what? So basically, what happened from that point when after your dad strikes your mom, and then obviously there must be a separation there?
Well, I mean, just to be honest, I don't recall if that was the pivotal moment of separation. But I mean, it was definitely the beginning to the end of having that relationship, having that father and mother at home.
Wow.
From that.
Yeah. No. I just think that's. I mean, it's so powerful, that experience happens not just to you, but there's a lot of young people where they experience that domestic violence in their lives, and I just think it's quite fascinating that you became a promoter, and you're involved in boxing, and how those your early years have impacted you very much. I can relate to them because I have had similar stories that I could tell relating to my own background and how I grew up seeing violence and being involved in violence. But I just want to go back to, so your daughter, so you have this storied childhood, right? And then you grow up to be an adult. Your daughter, 5 years ago, she's only 2.5 years old, God rest her soul, and she passes away. And you're at a pivotal turning point in your life, right? And you, oftentimes in our lives, something tragic, something majorly has to get in the way of the way we live our lives. Otherwise, we just go on like resentful and just kind of stuck in the ruts that we're living. And we can't really get out of that structure, and we don't even know why we're in that path. But then something extraordinary happens in our lives that causes a complete shift to everything we know, and it's almost like having a completely blank canvas. And I assume that's kind of what you experienced after the passing of your daughter. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously did, as I stated before. It was what I refer to is I became a man.
Yeah.
I have an older daughter that was 13 years old, so it had nothing to do with having kids or anything like that. It just, I believe that a man becomes a man when he learns his purpose in life.
Amen. That's right. And so listen, you have the passing of your daughter, and then so how does hard hitting promotions emerge? How does that happen?
That's a long way of how to explain it, but in a sense of it, basically when I was involved, let's just say this, I was, without going back into my past, because you almost have to understand what happened and why my transformation happened, but without going back into that, what happened to me when my daughter passed, and I was involved in boxing probably at least 12 to 15 years prior to that moment.
Right.
I managed some of Philadelphia's finest fighters. Was involved with some classic fights here in the local Philadelphia scene. Have worked with every promoter that you can mention in the local scene. Russell Peltz, Greg Robinson at the time was one of the prominent promoters. Pete, there was Johan.
Right. So you work with pretty much everybody who's in the Philadelphia scene and beyond, prior to you ever opening your own, starting hard hitting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I started. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers this. I mean, anybody that was around back then will remember. But Joey Eyes, for instance, is known as one of the best cutmen in the world and world renowned in the movie and all that. But Joey Eyes was also a promoter for a little while.
Wow. Yeah. So Joey I, for those of you that are listening in on this call, Joey I is is a really, really fantastic cut man. We had on a couple of weeks ago, we had on cutman Vic Starata, and we also had on Billy Briscoe. And those are three. Listen, Philly has its share of cornerman talent. They have there are some amazing, corner crews in Philly. It's just the Philly boxing scene is really outstanding.
Absolutely. So, and I've worked with all of them. I believe I heard your last episode with Billy, and he talked about how he worked Angel Ocasio's corner in a fight that a fighter passed away at the Blue Horizon, and that corner he was speaking about that he was working, I was that fighter's manager, which was Angel Ocasio.
Right.
So I was there that night as well. Billy's a great guy and really knows the sport. So I make a long story short, I was involved in boxing for years.
Right.
Before that, I started training fighters and quickly realized that there was a need for somebody, at least the way I saw it at the time, to be honest to these fighters and to teach them the business side of the sport. As I saw it at the time, fighters was just fighting. They really didn't know any of the business of the sport, and
right.
They would have to rely on somebody to trust and do their business for them.
Wow. And so that was your calling card. That was how you were gonna get involved in being a promoter from that aspect, or was that more on the management side?
In reality, promoting at that time, I mean, we're talking about 16 years ago. At
right.
that time, 15 years ago, at that time, I wasn't thinking about promoting.
Yeah.
It didn't even cross my mind. Let's be honest. I was a really young man at the time. I was 21 years old, 22 years old.
Yeah.
Managing fighters that I was maybe 2 years older.
Right. Right.
So and some that were older than me.
Yeah.
And I was their manager. So, and I was a security guard.
Wow. So yeah.
Making ends meet, and trying to make it in life. So in reality, I'll be honest with you, being a promoter wasn't something that you fathom that it could be real for me,
Right.
So I would say I really, at that time, to be honest, I didn't think about, or I had a goal of being a promoter. What happened was in the learning process of being a manager, I encountered some situations with the local boxing team, with the promoters that I was working at the time, that you had to adhere to what they wanted, whether you believed they was right or not.
Right.
That was the way it was, and if you went against the grain, then you was an outcast.
Right.
And we had the fortune that I knew a lot of people. I always, thank God, always had a good reputation. And my word was my worth.
Right.
My word. I didn't have money, so my word became my worth. So we were able to sell a lot of tickets at the time. I mean, for instance, if I mentioned Angel Casa, which we have mentioned at the time, I can show you, posters of some of the hottest fighters right now that we know were fighting on the undercard of his fight.
Right. Right. Like who? Name some people.
Let me see. I'm actually in my office right now, so I'm gonna dig in right here and start pulling out some
That's
old
it.
posters. In
Right.
1 second.
So, and while you're doing that, I'm grateful that you're doing that. And the interesting part of what you've been sharing is how hard hitting was formulated. And I know we talked a little bit about. And I mean, we've had so many conversations over the years, but we had talked about how the tragedy of losing your daughter, really there was an awakening in you and a feeling like a lack of fear, right? And this idea that you could, if you could go through that there was nothing that you were fearful of trying to do, and there was part of the seedlings that were dropped for the creation of hard hitting promotions. And I thought that was a really fascinating story when you shared it with me, and I just wanted the listeners to really know that was a very pivotal point for you, Manny. And also, when Manny's talking about pulling out older fighters and all of the different people that he's worked with and all of the different television promotions that he's conducted. He worked on Showtime. There's tons of promotions that he's been involved in. And his the most recent hard-hitting card happened right before coronavirus. It was actually on March 7th at Bally's in Atlantic City. And that card, I think Jeremy Cuevas was on that card. He got a knockout, and Isaiah Sheldon fought Daryl Bunting on that card, and Christian Tapia fought on that card, and I believe Thomas Velasquez and Gustav Molina was on that card, and Benjamin Shimkin, I think, was on that, and Gabriel Pham. Am I correct with all of that?
Correct. Derek Webster. No, absolutely.
Derek Webster.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was a banging fire card, man. That was an incredible night of boxing. And that if you didn't get down there to see that one, what I found to be amazing, I think it was just you and King Promotions were the last two fights in the Philadelphia region, New Jersey region, that took place right before coronavirus. And I think yours went off complete. I know it was a complete card, and the fight fans out there in AC were pumped to get that right before Corona.
Yeah, no, we were blessed. And,
Totally.
and it relates to my vision and my beliefs, and I believe God is on the forefront of everything, and when it's God's time, it's God's time, and if you put Him first, all things will happen the way they're supposed to happen.
That's so powerful. That's such a powerful statement right there. And in there, my friends, lies the secret to hard hitting. That is such a powerful statement. And I know you're a man of God, and definitely in conducting business with you, that that shines through in all that you do. And it's a pleasure. That it really is. So go ahead.
Going back to some of the names, just to answer that question, Keenan Smith, local Philadelphia fighter, was a hot prospect for a little while. I haven't heard mention his name in a few years, so I don't know where his career has gone, but he was a really hot prospect at the time. Obviously, I mean, Joey the Tank DeWaco.
Oh, wow.
You know, if I show you these posters here, you know, he looks like a kid. You know, Jesus Sorcido, which is a guy from upstate Pennsylvania.
Right.
Raymond Serrano.
Oh, Raymond Serrano, sure.
You know, if you look at this poster, you know, again, this is when Raymond Serrano was a youngster, you know, undefeated. Juan Rodriguez. This card right here that I'm speaking about was actually I don't know how many people are familiar with him, but I worked with this promoter closely. Actually, helped him a lot, and you know, I call it my internship years. It was
wow.
It was
right. Your pay dues. Your pay dues.
Correct. And it was Kia Boxing, Andre Cut.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right.
Was the promoter, and he was doing some fights at the 2300 arena at the time.
Right.
Back when I believe it was called the Asylum Arena back then, and it was a little different. The entrance was different. Everything was different. You know, Roger was still the man at the helm, and good man, Roger. We've done a lot of business together. Hope everything comes back, and him and his family can get back to the great things that they're doing at that establishment.
Right. Exactly.
But that was there. You know, also. You know, for instance, let me bring this one up. This was Valley Forge Casino. This was King's Promotion.
Yes. Shout out to the folks at King Promotions. They're great people.
Absolutely.
Great people, right? They're out there. They're grinding too, right? A shout out to all the promoters out there that are trying to get themselves together. And get these kids out there fighting and bringing boxing back to the fans, and because you guys have a hard job. It's not an easy job. It's a thankless job at times, and my hat goes off to promoters. A lot of managers and people that work with the promoters think the promoters are always dubious and complicated and not honest, but the fact of the matter is that there are good guys out there, and you gotta give them props for creating venues for the boxers to compete and to pursue their dreams. So again, shout out to all of you guys. Hope all the promoters and all the managers, everybody out there is doing well and keeping themselves safe, keeping their families safe, and keeping their boxers safe.
Amen to that. Yeah, this was also a great card. I mean, this was a great card from King's Promotion. I mean, the main event at this event was Naeem Nelson versus Georgie Kavashvili at the time. This was a big fight in the city. Harry Yorgi was also on the card. Travis Thompson, Jason Sosa, Ken Weatherspoon Jr., Angel Ocasio. You know,
that's what's up. That would be a great card. You know.
Yeah, this was
so
a great card thrown by us.
What I wanted to ask you, I actually had a question for you because I've been following some of the guys that you have on your promotion that you've signed. Some very. Mm-hmm. I just want to talk to you a little bit about a couple of guys that I've been keeping my eye on and watching. And so, is that okay if we chat a little bit about your fighters? You have a fighter by the name of Jeremy Cuevas, and Jeremy Cuevas, right? Jeremy is, I believe, if my memory strikes me well, which it doesn't, all the punches, right? But I believe he's like 13-1 with like 10 KOs. He's got like a 71.43% KO ratio. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, I got that one right. So, can we talk about him? Why? Like he's one of your signed fighters. I saw him fight actually at a venue that I adore, which is the Met. You put on the most outstanding shows over there at the Met, and I was actually working with one of my fighters on that card, and there's a I saw him fight, and I was just so impressed with his work, his athleticism, and his ring generalship was fantastic. Not to mention his combination. So can we just what's your thoughts about that guy?
Jeremy Cuevas speaks for himself. I mean, he really does. Jeremy Cuevas, he can tell you better than I can. But I attended a lot of his amateur fights. At the time, he was with Tony Brisante, was his trainer in the amateurs, and really 90% of his pro career.
Right.
And Tony, I know Tony for a long, long time.
Tony's his manager, trainer?
He was his trainer at the time. Trainer, manager,
Gotcha.
A lot of times in boxing, you have trainer and the trainer becomes your manager and so on and so forth. But he, me and Tony worked together for a long time, and Tony had fighters. I mean, Tony's been in boxing for probably 60 years.
Right.
Right. So, when I was a young guy, he was one of the guys that taught me a lot. I give my hats off to Tony. I mean, I learned a lot from that man. And, he used to always tell me, it was in Hard Hitting's infancy. We just had started a promotion, and because of our relationship, he used to always tell me about, this young Latin kid that he has that is an amateur, but, he has this strong belief about him.
Right.
And every time I saw him, he would tell me the same. So I said, let me know, and I'll definitely go see him, And sure enough, he did. And every time he fought, Tony would let me know. And as many times as I could, I would go and see Jeremy. And what I quickly realized that it didn't matter what I started focusing on. It didn't matter whether he lost or won the fight. I seen that what Jeremy, to me, my opinion was, he was a quintessential Puerto Rican fighter.
Right.
He wasn't suited for the amateurs. I mean, it's something embedded in the Puerto Rican culture, and I can't try to explain what it is. But
that's a whole other cast. Listen, that's a whole other cast, brother. That that.
But yeah, but Puerto Rico as an island don't produce, or at least are not known to produce. Let's just say it that way. Are not known to produce big amateur stars.
Right. But
they are world renowned in producing, world champions.
Right. That's right.
And I equate that to their style of training. Their style of training is a pro style.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a difference. A lot of people don't understand that there is a difference. That was Jeremy. That was Jeremy in a sense. That was Tony's style of training. Old school fighter himself, and old school mentality, and that was his style of training. So that's what Jeremy was. He obviously, being a Puerto Rican kid, and having that DNA, he adapted to that style. And, I can tell Jeremy was what you call an aggressive, power puncher. And, he wasn't looking for points.
Right. He looking to get him out of there.
You out.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like I said, whether he got the victory or he didn't, he got most of them. Trust me and believe, he got most of them. But what I saw was his ability, as I saw it, to be able to adapt in the pro was going to be so much easier for him than a lot of successful amateur fighters that were around,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And that was my interest to Jeremy, and I used to always tell him that, you know?
Right.
And when and I will say this because this is kudos to Jeremy. In reality, for all sense of everything is, and I give him, you know, you don't see this in today's day and age, but our agreement with Jeremy was on a handshake.
Wow.
Until he was 10-0, Jeremy was not signed to Hard Hitting Promotion.
Wow. That's a handshake. And, you know, it's so funny because we hear, you know, a lot of the, you know, the old school way of doing business was on a handshake. I've talked to, you know, a number of promoters that have said, you know, back in the day, we used to do, I did, you know, a multi-million-dollar deal with a handshake. And it's amazing how the boxing, the industry has really changed and how different it is. The climate has really shifted, and it's very difficult for a fighter to track their career, to really set their career in motion fully, because there's so much coming at them and there's so little information for them to really have in figuring out how to navigate a full career. And so when you tell me that you're doing a handshake deal with him, that says so much about both of you. You know, that's amazing, you know?
Yeah, no. And like I said, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you in my thinking, right? And once again, these are not my sole decisions. I mean, like you mentioned in the beginning, we have a big team, and I believe, and I'm speaking for myself, and I know my partners feel the same, but I believe that every member of our team, you know, I'll let you know this as well. You've been a part of our team. I mean, anybody that has in some way, shape, or form contribute to our success,
Right.
is part of our team.
That's
because
right.
without their input, without their contributions, we would not be where we are. You
Right.
know?
Well,
So
that's a distinction that you make as a as a leader. That's a really amazing distinction that you just made, because, you know, a lot of really great leaders understand that they are great leaders because they have great people to lead and they have great people to work with. And, you know, a business or a company is only as good as the people that are willing to, you know, put out that blood, sweat, and tears to see the organization succeed. So that is that what you just said is very real, you know?
So with that being said, thank you, Mark. With that being said, so, you know, of course, I was the one who had the relationship with Jeremy, and my partners, you know, understood where I was coming from, and like always agreed with what, you know, we were doing.
Right, of course.
And you know, it wasn't because of Jeremy. I mean, so funny enough, he wasn't signed because he didn't. I mean, he was not signed because he did not want to. It actually was the opposite. You know, he believed that there was something wrong, even though he kept winning and kept knocking guys out. That you know, I did not produce a contract and had him sign it. And it's a shame because this is the mentality of most fighters. And I used to always tell him, you know, Jeremy, to me, you are a unique individual. You are so young with such a man's mentality, you know. I can tell that you are a man of your word. And me being who I am and understanding that my worth was my word, I've seen that in Jeremy at his age.
Wow.
And I didn't have no fear. I didn't have the fear in any way that, you know, somebody was gonna get in his ear or manipulate him. Or,
Right.
you know, he's a strong, convicted, and to this day he will tell you he's a strong, convicted, strong-minded, you know, young man. So, you know, he wasn't signed, and it wasn't because he didn't want to. It was just because I didn't feel that it was a need to.
Right.
And unfortunately, you know, I believe that, you know, let's be honest, a contract is only made so when something happens, each party has some type of platform to say, well, this is what my contract says, or
right.
this is what, you know, the other side, this is what the contract says, and then fight over it. Because, I mean, from my experience, I've never seen a fighter have a contract and look at it every day like a trophy.
Oh no,
Usually
and you know,
they sign it.
And you know that a lot of these fighters, even if you know they have the contracts can be very wordy. They can be very complicated, and if you don't have a good esquire, a good attorney reviewing your contract, a good manager overseeing that, you know, you could find yourself in a situation that you really don't want to be in.
Absolutely. I mean, my belief is a good contract could come from the smallest promoter to the biggest promoter. Right. And a bad contract could come from the biggest promoter to the smallest promoter.
And they do. And they do.
They do.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I mean, I've seen everything. I've seen contract. I mean, I've seen everything. And, you know, you're right. I think that even with a contract, there's a lot of people, not just in boxing, in just general, that have a contract and still don't follow it, and still don't read it, and still don't adhere to it.
Absolutely, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, contract's only as good as the person who you've made the contract with.
There you go. So that leads to exactly what my motto is with that. Unfortunately, we live in an era that it's almost needed. Right. Right?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. To me, I equate a fighter and promoter's relationship to a marriage.
Yeah.
You know,
it is.
It doesn't matter if you're married or not. If trust starts, you know, dimming, or trust issues start happening, and you're not seeing eye to eye, it's not going to work. It's whether you're married or you're not. The relationship's not going to work.
You know what happens there is the sharks come out.
Correct.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you know, I just believe that, you know, I all I need to do is do my part, and all the fighter needs to do is do his part, and we will come to the understanding that, you know, that the business is right.
Right, exactly.
Whether you have a contract or not.
So
I said, unfortunately, we live in a world that it's almost needed, but this is why that decision was made with Jeremy for all that time until, like, he turned, you know, 10-0, and, you know, I said, you know what, Jeremy, you've been asking me for a long time. Let's just lock it in, and let's move to the next step.
That's right, and it's time. It's time to produce that, because you're going to start. You know, his record is such, and his tenacity is such. He's a very gifted talent, and you know, 13 with 10 knockouts is a very impressive record. And you're going to start moving. I believe he might be ranked somewhere in the 135, 6 in the world, and that, you know, his ascension is going to happen pretty quickly, especially when we return to boxing. So, I think that that's a very important thing to do, which is to make sure the contract is right for his protection and also for your protection and all of the investment that you're putting in to get his career to be where it's supposed to be. So I applaud you for that. And I actually wanted to ask you before we run out of time here, I did want to ask you a little bit about your feeling about your fighter, very talented fighter, Christian Tapia, who I really enjoy. I really enjoy watching him fight. He's 11-0 with 10 KOs. Very impressive young man.
Yes, I mean, look, it correlates, right? Everything correlates together. I mean, Tapia was another young kid. He was 3-0 at the time when he was brought to my attention. His father is humble man, respected man from Puerto Rico. He was living in Puerto Rico when he was brought to my attention.
Wow.
And the goal was that if he came down here, would I work with him? And I said, yeah, when he gets down here, give me a call and we'll talk. And if I see what I would believe it can work, then yeah, we'll definitely work together.
Right.
And a few months later, I get the call, and he's here. He's living in Camden, New Jersey, where he currently lives now, and we had the meeting, and same scenario. His father is an honorable man, humble man from Puerto Rico.
Trainer, his trainer.
And trainer, yep, he's his trainer. He's very knowledgeable about the sport. Yep. And we had a man-to-man conversation, and he's also a man that you can tell that when he gives you his word,
right,
it and meant it, and I love the conversation, and I love the way he was. Once again, it's why we do the business we do. I live by, the motto of, people's words mean more than anything.
That word is bond, as we say.
that to me is bond.
That's
a person's word to me, if you give me your word, I'm going to take you forward. More than if you sign any document or anything like that.
Right. So you got. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. We started working together.
Yeah, man.
We started working together.
So he's got a very impressive record, and I'm sure that he's going to see pretty big things in his future as well. I mean, he's fighting right around 130, 135 pounds, right?
Yeah, he's actually a 130-pound fighter.
Right.
But once again, he's another one. He's like them. He's a throwback fighter, Puerto Rican fighter where, if we have to fight at 134, 135, then we'll fight 5 pounds more. And
right.
The outcome has been the same. They haven't laughed.
It's impressive. It's impressive because he's fighting at 130. He's fighting up at 135. And that makes his the landscape pretty wide open. You're not going to have a difficulty finding quality opponents for him to fight in those two classes.
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy, and the proof is in the pudding. So what we're glad about is in the team, if I talk for me and my partners, is that that we're proud that. The one thing we can say that we're proud is that, the fighters that we really had raised them. We really have. They're where they're at because we have worked together and they have achieved, their goals.
Right.
Jeremy Gray was a pro debut. Christian Tapia, as you know, he was 3-0. Another one I want to mention is Benny Sinekin.
Right.
Another same thing, is Benny Sinekin. If you know Pops, we all call him Pops.
Right.
Benny's dad is a Jewish man that, is a throwback to the old days. Is the same thing. There's no how do you say that? Surprise. It's not a coincidence that our fighters that are under Hard Hitting's banner, all are cut from the same cloth.
Right.
It's their character and their people in their corners and the people that they listen to's character is what's most important to me, as I understand that that's what's going to make the fighter successful.
Right.
It's who he surrounds himself with. It's what his character is. Because your skill you could always teach,
Right.
but your ability and your character comes within.
Oh yeah, you're talking about ability, Billy. We talked about that recently. The ability really defines much of who a person is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you also have Trayshawn Wiggins, right? You have Trayshawn.
Yeah.
Philly fighter. No, he fights out of Philly, but he's really from upstate New York. Yeah,
upstate Pennsylvania. He's on the borderline of upstate
Newburgh.
Pennsylvania, New York. That borderline. But he actually resides in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So Trayshawn is a funny story because anybody that knows Trayshawn has fought some of our fighters, have drones to some of our fighters, have beat some of our former fighters, and the way Trayshawn's relationship and ours happened, it because of the way we conduct business.
Right.
As anybody knows Trayshawn's story or follows his career, the kid has fought for everybody.
Right.
From PVC to the smallest promoter. So.
Yeah, he's been all over. He's definitely been. He's a journeyman for sure. I know he fought.
Absolutely.
He fought Brandon Pizzaro in at the Met, right? And that was I think that was a draw, if I remember right.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
He also fought Samuel Tia, another great young man. Shout out to Sammy Tia.
Wow.
I seen him. Before all of this at the mall.
That fight with Tia was actually that was at 140, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And it was a unbelievable fight. So what happened is in that course, Trayshawn, he was always, even before that fight, Manny, man, I want to work with you guys. I love the way you guys are. I fought for everybody. And There's something different about you guys. I want to be part of this. I want to be part of what you're doing. And I would say, look, Trey, in time, if it's meant to be, it's going to happen,
Right.
And he would say, okay, and every time I called him and, I offered him something and, what do you think? And I say, listen, I think you're a great fighter. I think this is going to be a great fight and it's all going to become on the outcome of what you do,
Right.
Obviously, you're being considered and, that's a mental thing more than it is a real thing,
Right.
on being an opponent. If you believe you're an opponent, then you become an opponent. If you don't believe you're an opponent, then you can flip that egg,
Right. Right.
that's Trey Songz. So, make a long story short, after his fight with Brandon and all, you know, he was calling me, you know, Manny, you know, what do I have to do? You know, look at what I did. You know, what do I have to do to prove myself? And I said, absolutely nothing. I apologize for not, giving you the opportunity, you know, to work with us. I really do apologize that we had a meeting with him and his manager. They came down to Philly and we sat down and talked, and you know, I found out the same thing that I found out about Jeremy, about you know, all the fighters that's been with us, Brandon and Sammy and all of them. They were all from the same cloth. I mean, they were men of their word. They were good people first and foremost, and you know, and just have a belief system. So
and you can work with them. You know that you can work with them because of the. Yeah, I got that. And so early on, it should be noted that he fought Jason Sosa early on, right? Didn't he fight like in 2000, like 10 years ago? He fought Jason Sosa and he defeated him, right?
And he beat him. Yeah,
and
Jason Sosa. Yeah.
Jason Sosa,
I believe, stopped Jason Sosa.
Yeah, he TKO'd him in the first round of 4. Yeah, early on.
Correct.
That's amazing. So you got yourself a couple of really good. I really want. I'm so thankful because I wanted to talk about those specific fighters that you have on the hard hitting promotions, and really, you know, the for the fans out there, you know, we've been just so deep in conversation that I haven't been addressing you, but I did want to tell you that, you know, when I went to the fights at the Met. It really reminded me, right? Now, bear with me here because the Blue Horizon is not, you know, the same venue as the Met, but there was a feeling in that very large, beautiful, you know, theater, the Met, which is perfect for boxing. There was such a feeling about the fights that took place there that was really special. There was a very special feeling that you created and that your team put together that, you know, I just think the boxing fans out there should really, if you haven't gotten to see a fight there at the Met, you definitely should make it a point because it is a spectacular venue for boxing. And, you know, there's a lot of wonderful venues in Philly for boxing, but that one is one of my personal particular favorites of all the venues that we fought in and that that I've gotten a chance to be in and with. So I just wanted to point that out.
No, absolutely. Look, Mark, if I may say something along the lines of the Man and other places that we've been you know, blessed to host events at. And I don't know if this is something that people know. You know, like I said, our boxing promotion team, Hard Hitting Promotions, was formed in 2015, and the name derives from my partner Will Ruiz, which he was promoting fights in Florida,
right?
Prior to us joining together here in Philadelphia, and he was using the name of Hard Hitting Promotions.
Wow.
And when we joined forces, me and Will, I mean, Will's my brother. I don't have a biological brother. Will is my biological brother.
Yeah. Will's a great guy. He's an outstanding man, and you know, really, really great to have him as a partner there.
Absolutely. So when I was contemplating promotions, and you know, he is, I don't know if people know, but Will is, and he's known to be one of the best matchmakers in the business. I mean, he's matchmade for King's Promotion for a long time when they were doing all the PBC fights. Will was one of their main matchmakers. He's matchmade for Golden Boy, Top Rank. I mean, every major promotion that you can think of, Will has matchmade for them. And in a lot of cases, I know firsthand has saved shows for them.
Right.
So his ability when it comes to that is awesome.
Very talented.
And you know, when we formed that bond, then you know, like we know, you know, if people don't know, you know, we both come from very humble beginnings, and we to this day are working men. You know, we feed our family not through boxing, but through, you know, our work, our daily, you know, work. And so when we were contemplating and doing boxing, we just needed, you know, a partner that we can form and have a financial interest in the company so we can grow, right? And you know, a long time friend of mine, which at the time is a funny story because I didn't even know we were friends through a family member. And he introduced me to him at one of the fights back when, and this is funny, but back when Joey Eyes and David Feldman, which is the head of, I believe he's the head of Bare Knuckle Fighting now.
Yeah, he is.
So, shout out to him, and I'm so, you know, happy for him and his found success.
He's doing a great job. He's doing a great job over there with Bare Knuckle, and actually, he's shout out to him is right, because that's, you know, he's going where no man has gone before, or they have gone at the turn of the century.
I'll tell you something about David Feldman. I mean, I've done a lot of business with David Feldman.
Right.
David is a straight up and down individual. I mean, his word is his worth, just like mine. I mean,
right.
I can't never he said something to me that he didn't deliver. So
that's what's up right there.
He's one of the, you know, in my experience, he's one of the most straight shooter type of promoters that you can encounter in today's boxing.
Right.
But at this time, he was doing shows with Joey Eyes, and they were at the casino at Harris in Chester Casino. They were doing some shows together there, and this is where I got introduced to our third partner, which is John Miranda, great man, mentor. Yep. I mean, it's like I said, God joins people, and you believe that it's for a certain purpose, but you don't realize until time passes that it really, that was just a tool that brought you together, but it was for a whole different reason. And you know, he used to come to all my events back when I was managing fighters. You know, he would come as like I said, as a friend, and he just loved the sport of boxing. So one day, you know, unbeknownst to me, years later, you know, I'm talking about how I want to form this promotion, and we have the blueprint and this and that, and you know, and that got back to him, and he called me and he said, "Manny, I want to have a conversation with you. You know, I hear that you want to, you know, start this promotion and this and that," and literally we had a conversation in his car. I could remember like it was yesterday. We had a conversation in his car. And just like me and you, Mark, had conversations and we call each other for a purpose.
Right.
And we talk, and if we talk for an hour, you know, 45 minutes of it is due to life and God and God's implementation.
Amen.
And worldly and worldly things. And that's what happened there. And, you know, I shared my story with him. I told him, you know, even though we knew each other, like I said, but not in that sense.
Right.
And that day we shared tears together, you know, in the store, you know, in our stories and in our conversations. Wow. But at the end of the day was when he revealed to me who he really was.
Right.
You know, and you know, and just to sum it up, he's a successful man in his own right, and deservedly so, because, I mean, like I said, you want to talk about following somebody's godly morals in business.
Right.
I mean, that's him. I mean, he's that man, and he became a mentor to me more than a partner.
Wow.
And so basically it just ended up, look, I got my part, you guys got yours, let's join and let's give this a shot. And
right.
And that's what we did.
And look at what you guys have done. It's spectacular, it's extraordinary. You are an amazing man. And so what's next for hard hitting? What do you see? We got COVID here. We know there's going to be a return. What's next for hard hitting promotions?
I mean, look, like I said, and I don't mean to be redundant. I'm saying the same thing over and over, but you know, I just came to the realization that this is just my reality. God is on the forefront of all things under the heavens. And, you know, obviously we all have to do our job. We all have to do what we need to do to make things happen. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen in his time and when he said so. You know what I mean?
Amen.
So what is going to be the future for us, for boxing, for, you know, for the United States and the world? I mean, only he knows. But, you know, our drive has not changed. My drive has not changed. Obviously, we are all trying to conform to the new norm, right. Which I believe, and even though it was kind of going this way anyway, but what I believe is that, before COVID, it was hard enough to do a boxing event like we were doing, and I don't know if a lot of people don't understand this, that are not in the business. Promoters that don't rely on network television to do shows and that could stay relevant are the promoters that really have the right formula. And I say that to say this. Anybody can do a show. Anybody can do a show if you have some knowledge of the sport and some business sense. If a network is giving you $1 million and you set a budget of $500,000 to put the show together, the ability to do a show and depend on the audience to come and enjoy it and support it, to be able to recoup and to be able to keep producing shows. Those are the promoters that really know the sport and really have the formula to do it.
Right.
And with that being said, you have to give a shout out. I will always give a shout out to all promoters that are successful in the sport and can keep, giving their fighters fights and raising their fighters the right way. without network television. I mean, it just
it's extraordinary.
It becomes that harder. It's like digging a hole with a shovel instead of a backhoe.
Right. Yep.
You know, that's the the correlation that I can make.
Right.
You know what I mean? A promoter without a network is like digging a 20-foot hole with a shovel, and a promoter with a network is like digging a hole with a backhoe.
Right. You got that's a good analogy there. That's a good one.
So shout out to all promoters that are doing that. So, you know, to answer your question, I mean, like I said, you know, we are trying to see what we need to do in our power, from talking from my, you know, from me and not my partners. You know, all I can do is what I believe that God's intent is that I need to do, and I keep him on the forefront and know that he's gonna put us in the right situation where the right time is going to come, and the right shows are going to be able to be put together for the safety of all, not just for financial gain for the promotion, you know, which is most important, you know, in these times that we're, you know, that we're doing. Keep in mind it is a business, and financials do need to work, as people in the sport will contest to that, that it needs to work.
So it's safe, but it's safe to say that Manny Rivera of Hard Hitting Promotions is saying that it's God's plan.
Amen. And for those who don't believe it, listen. For those who don't believe it, I was a young kid that was supposed to be a statistic. Let me just say this. I was a young kid that I was supposed to be a statistic. I was supposed to be, you know, in special ed and learning disabilities and all that. And kudos to my mother as a single mother struggling in this country with all the adversity that she had her surpassed, and didn't believe the scrutiny and what people were labeling her son as, and gave me the opportunity to grow and to become my own man and to do the great things that thank God I'm able to do now. So if I can do it, it's possible. And when I tell you I had humble beginnings, you know, I know what it is to eat a syrup sandwich. I know what it is to drink water with sugar when there was no milk as a kid.
Right.
I know what it is to live inside of a shelter, you know, for months. You know, I know what it is to be left in a crack house for hours.
Wow.
While the people that were supposed to be taking care of you are doing drugs. You know, I've seen all the uglies in the world. And with all that said, God has protected me, and God did not let me fall to the same traps that, you know, my father did, and some of the other people that were around me did.
Wow.
You know, I'll be the first one to say I'm not perfect, but I'm a living proof of, you know, your word is more. If your word is your worth, it's more than people that are rich.
Wow.
And I've been a living proof to that. And let me just touch on this really quick, Mark, just to prove this point. You know, I am a man, like I said, I have a 9 to 5, which entails helping people. And that's what I dedicate myself in the sport of boxing and outside the sport of boxing, as I understand that that's just my calling. And, you know, this humble kid and my partners have broken so many barriers in the last 5 years of a promotion. You know, we were the first promoters to open the doors to the Sugar House Casino. We introduced what the floor plan was to the Sugar House Casino. I created that floor plan for the Sugar House Casino that then you've seen other promoters use. We were the first promotion and the only promotions to do shows at the luxurious Met, as you know, at the Fillmore, Philadelphia.
Wow.
Which are 2 venues in the city that were not known to do boxing, were closed to all other promoters, and other promoters have not done boxing events there. And that is all due to this kid, this man now, really living by his word and realizing that his word was his worth. I remember when we announced the show at the Met. As great as that was, I'll give you a little backstory. As great as that was, it was really disheartening for me and frustrating for me that, you know, a lot of promoters did not believe or think that we were deserving of it. And they couldn't understand how, you know, we were the ones who got in there. I mean, I'm talking about, without having to disclose any names, some of the biggest promotions in the world were trying to get in there. And through God's grace, and this is why I'm saying God is on the forefront of it, we got the nod and the respect and the how do you say that, the commitment that you know, we were going to be the promoter and nobody else was going to interrupt what we were trying to do.
Amazing. That is outstanding and really remarkable, what you guys have achieved in a little more than 5 years. And Manny, I just want to thank you for being on the program today, and I want to thank you for sharing your story with all of the listeners. And I really wish you all the luck and Godspeed. And I know God will take care of you and will keep you safe and keep you guided correctly. And again, I just want to thank you for being on the program. And with that,
first and foremost, thank you, Mark, as a good friend, as a brother, as I consider you, to be able to give me the time and the platform to share, you know, what I have to say. I want to thank my family for being so supportive. Anybody that's a boxing promoter knows that their family is the beacon to their success. So I want to thank my wife, my kids, and everyone else that's been around me. Hard hitting. If anybody knows hard hitting, their whole staff, ushers, and everything is family members. I want to thank Samad Ha. You know, he became hard hitting lead photographer and you know, anything that has to do with artwork and photography and everything like that. He's the head on that. He's been the head on that for a couple of fights now, and it just, he's also been a mentor to me. That man has done more for me than what he believes I've done for him. So I definitely want to give a shout out to him. I want to give a shout out to Ray McCline. a good friend, good brother, just good human being, from Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. Obviously, I want to give thanks to my partner, Will Ruiz, and my partner, John Miranda. Without them, we won't be able to have this conversation. We would only be able to talk about my past. I want to thank some of the people that has helped me along. Roxanne Rivera from the Flagship. She was a great reason on why we were able to do shows at the last show in Atlantic City, and opened the doors back up to Bally's and Caesars Entertainment, which was closed to promotion for a long, long time. I believe we found a new home there, and I believe that when all said and done and in God's time, we will continue to do some great shows in Caesars Entertainment. I want to thank, so many people, just everybody that had to do with our success, anybody that's ever fought for us, anybody that's ever had anything to do with one of our events. I want to thank you for it, because I know that without you, those events, that success would have never, ever been as successful as it is. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for being on the program. And hold tight. Let's exit on out here and stand by.
Fight fans, join host Mark Roxey and special guests as they break down all aspects of the boxing world, including news, business, management, training, promotions, fan reactions, upcoming events, matchups, future boxing stars, title fights, state of the boxing world, and all the stuff you don't see when you watch boxing. This podcast is released each week on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live streamed on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook Live. It's the Boxing Breakdown, hosted by Mark Roxey.